What's up, y'all? You're listening to the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller with the Eagle, joined by Travis Brown of the Eagle. Travis, how goes it on a Wednesday afternoon?
It's bright, it's sunny. I probably should be on the golf course, but I'm here with you. But that's okay. I enjoy
Okay.
your company.
So last week on our podcast, we had Trevor Warner. You sat down with him inside Bluebell Park previewing A&M's baseball season. We'll talk about A&M's opening weekend here in a bit. But I have a confession and a criticism because at the end of your interview, you asked Trevor why he does not eat beef. And he explained that that's because when he watched Rocky as a kid, he saw Rocky, practicing for the great Apollo Creed on a beef carcass, and that's why he doesn't eat beef. I have to admit, I had never seen Rocky before, so I had to watch it. And after watching it, I have to say it is not a good movie. It is actually not a good movie.
I mean, he might come into your house and beat you up tonight for saying that.
I mean, he might, but like it actually was not a good movie. And maybe my expectations were too high because it's what, like 50 years old almost, but like it was a bad movie. So a
Well,
confession and a complaint.
if you have any thoughts on that and Alex Miller's thoughts on Rocky, you can email that to robert.cessna@theeagle.com.
There you go. Well, in other news, A&M men's basketball is on a tear. They've won 6 straight now after Tuesday's win against Tennessee. Travis, that might have been maybe the biggest game, the biggest win of A&M's season, and now they've really positioned themselves well coming into this last 3 games, but they got to get past that Mississippi two-step over the next few days as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was the biggest win of their season because I don't think that was one that I actually had them winning a couple of weeks ago. And so it's another quad one win. It's a win against the 11th ranked team in the nation. I think barring a cataclysmic just falling apart in the last 2 games where they lose to Mississippi State and Ole Miss and Alabama. I mean, even in that case, I still think that they're in the NCAA tournament field, especially because of that win. They were in it certainly before that win, but I think that was kind of the lock that put them in there.
I kind of wonder, I think maybe last week, if we were talking about A&M men's basketball, we might have asked ourselves, can A&M win the SEC? Now with where they're positioned and looking at maybe a potential showdown against Alabama in that regular season finale, Travis, can and will A&M win the Southeastern Conference, the regular season crown?
So it's looking like if A&M can take care of business against Mississippi State, and then certainly they should be able to take care of business against Ole Miss, who has not been good this season. It looks like it's going to come down to a season finale against Alabama, which is exactly what probably the SEC would not have expected, but are probably pretty pleased about, that they'll have that kind of high drama on the last Saturday of the season. You would have to think, and I haven't looked across the country of that weekend, but you have to think if there's one game to play for the SEC crown, then that would you think College Game Day might be there, and it could be a really big event for A&M and for Alabama and for the SEC. That being said, it could be taken care of on the other end of things because Alabama has 4 games. They play tonight, so they're a game behind the Aggies. And they have South Carolina, which they should win tonight easily. But then they have the stretch of Arkansas, Auburn, and Texas A&M, which is a much harder stretch than the Aggies have to play.
Yeah.
They've already lost. A&M's already lost to Arkansas once, but then they beat Arkansas once and took the season series against Auburn. And then you have, of course, the Alabama-Auburn rivalry, the kind of little Iron Bowl matchup there. Alabama has already beat Arkansas this year, 84-69, and beat Auburn 77-69. So they already have two wins there, but that is those are both home for Alabama too. So a little bit of an easier stretch there. I would think, just looking at things, and if you're kind of a betting person, I would think A&M would have better odds at being the team to have the undefeated record in this small little stretch heading into that last game than Alabama would. And then it just comes down to one game, and that's a lot of fun.
Well, A&M's certainly going to have a tough matchup on Saturday. They got to get over the hump, per se, at the hump. They got to go at Mississippi State. This seems to kind of maybe have trap game written all over it. And Mississippi State's they're squarely on the bubble. They need a win over a team like A&M to help, kind of bolster their resume as they try and sneak into the big dance.
Yeah, they've had 2 overtime losses, or excuse me, an overtime win and an overtime loss in their last 2 games here this season. I mean, they have a pretty decent resume considering they got that quad 1 win in the SEC Big 12 challenge against TCU. They have a win over Missouri. They have a win over Arkansas. Their resume is kind of down the middle there. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup. They're a good defensive team. Actually, the number 5 defense in the nation. If you look at KenPom, which is, A&M just beat Tennessee, which is the number 1, but A&M was at home. Just Mississippi State is not a very good offensive team, ranked 178th by KenPom in adjusted efficiency. They're one of the last in the country in 3-point percentage, which, as we know, with how A&M plays defense, one of the keys if you want to take down A&M is to get hot from behind the arc. And they're really terrible at free throw percentage, one of the worst in the country at free throw percentage. But they're going to get some offensive rebounds, and they're going to play good defense. So, here's the thing that's been interesting about A&M. They've been winning these games and they've followed their recipe, but in all reality, they have not been shooting the ball very well the last few games. Last night they needed a season high in free or they needed Julius Marble and Wade Taylor to have season highs in both free throw attempts and free throw makes to help put down the Volunteers. And so they probably need to pick up a little bit of steam in the actual field goal percentage portion of their stat line. I'm trying to pull up here their last 5 games. Just in general, their shooting percentage over the last 5 games is their effective field goal percentage, which includes the amount that 3-pointers play into having a little bit more point production. They're 291st at 48%. And I'm just trying to see their general free throw percentage. Anyway, it's not been great over the last 5 games. I mean, that's down a little bit from their overall season percentage. So anyway, that being said, need to shoot a little bit better from the field, but the way you mitigate that is offensive rebounds and getting the free throw line.
Something that was discussed on the TV broadcasts last night was watching a little bit from home. They asked the question, is Wade Taylor the best point guard in the SEC right now? I mean, he has really turned a corner in his game, especially through conference play this season.
Yeah, there was Optima Stats tweeted out a thing last night that, only some of those really deep analytical websites can track. And so per Opta Stats, Wade Taylor is one of 2 Division I players in the last 25 years to have a 5-game span with 100+ points, 40+ free throws made, 20+ assists, 15+ 3-pointers made, 10+ steals, 45% 3-point shooting, and a 90% free throw shooting. I don't know. Did you see this tweet, Alex?
Yeah, and I was pretty impressed at who the other player was.
The other guy is none other than Steph Curry of Davidson and Golden State Warrior fame. So I think anytime that you're included in the category with that guy, you're probably doing stuff pretty right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was I saw that and I was like, oh wow, that's a pretty impressive feat. And maybe another impressive feat is just the overall turnaround that A&M's had on the men's basketball side. Their net ranking is 23 right now. They're up to 6 quad 1 wins. Still have 2 quad 1 games to go. Travis, I had a buddy text me last night. He said, I need to get a shirt that says I was at Wofford. I mean, this is not the same team that A&M was, just 2 months ago when they lost at home to Wofford.
I don't know who it was. Someone said that their kid was talking about someone on Twitter, and I'm sure it's someone who we know, was saying that their kid was like, what's happening to this basketball team? I mean, like months ago, they lost to Waffles. So yeah, it's been quite the turnaround. Here's the thing. I mean, there's been several reasons why this team has turned around, one of which is they completely revamped the way they do practice, the way they schedule practice, the way they kind of work through their schedule and everything as a program. And they seem to say that has really helped. But I think that there's a couple things at play here. First, I think that in this age of transfer portal and where college basketball teams are seemingly going to completely revamp half, if not more, of their roster every year, the key to success is the race to who can gel, who can learn the system, who can form chemistry the quickest. And I think if you're looking at this A&M team, it might not have taken them as long as it did last year, but it still probably took them longer than the average successful team this year. And I think that over that Christmas break, that loss to Wofford was a little bit of a wake-up call. And I think that is kind of when things started to gel. People started to kind of fall into the system and understand what they were doing. I mean, look at a guy like Dexter Dennis. I did a feature on him. He wasn't even able to come in and start working with the team until the first day of classes because he had to finish an internship to get the right credits and transcripts and things to transfer over to Texas A&M. So while everyone else on the team was already in Aggie land doing their off-season workouts and getting the playbooks and whatnot, Dexter Dennis was off doing this internship, and it wasn't until the first day of class. So he was about 2 months behind. And he said it took him about 2 months to get caught up, which puts you right at about Christmas. And, I talked to Mark French earlier this week, a former A&M basketball player, on one of our videos. And I mean, just by the stats alone, Dexter Dennis might not be the guy who's going to put the best stats on all of the columns. He might not be the leading scorer. He might not be the leading rebounder, but you can kind of tell how the team is going. He's a good litmus test of the team because usually when he's doing better things, it's trending towards the whole team doing better things. And when he's not playing so great, it's trending towards the team that's not necessarily playing so great. And so I think that's just an example of that needing to kind of get integrated in the system and building cohesion amongst the team. That's just a part of this age of college basketball. And one other thing, too, that has kind of emerged about this team that was a little bit present there earlier, but has become more relevant is the fact that this is as deep as a team as A&M has had since probably the last time that they were in the NCAA tournament, in the sense that there's not that one guy that you're going to go over and say, well, he needs to be the guy to be the high point man, or else this is going to go really bad. Last year, that was Quentin Jackson. You needed to have Quentin Jackson scoring. If he wasn't scoring, you weren't going to get the production from everyone else to be able to make the math work to win the game. But this season, it could be Wade Taylor. It could be Tyrese Radford. It could even be Dexter Dennis, or then it could be Julius Marble or Henry Coleman. Any of that starting lineup could be in there and step up. And then when you look at rebounding and how much emphasis this team puts on rebounding, it could be Julius Marble, it could be Henry Coleman, but it could also be Dexter Dennis or Tyrese Radford or Anderson Garcia, for that matter, coming on as one of the 6 men off the bench. So as we kind of saw last night, if some guys Tyrese Radford never got into the rhythm of the game. Dexter Dennis was there defensively and he pulled in some rebounds, but his offense didn't click in like the same way it did at Missouri. Henry Coleman was pretty much negated from the game because of foul trouble, and it basically landed on Julius Marble and Wade Taylor to try to carry this team, and they were able to do it because they have that depth. I think that those are some of the key components to the turnaround of what A&M's been able to do.
Well, hey, last week, Travis, there was some big news from the 12th Man Foundation. They announced 12th Man Plus Fund. It's an NIL fund for A&M athletes, and kind of seems to be a novelty of sorts. So, Travis, can you just kind of walk us through what this really entails and what it really is about?
Yeah, it's as one lawyer put it, it's pretty cutting edge because it's the first time that an NIL collective fund, insert your word of choice here, has been tied in with the main booster club organization that has an association with an athletic department. Save for maybe Arkansas, but the mechanics of the one at Arkansas work just a little bit different than this one. So what that means is this is an organization. The 12 Man Foundation, of course, is a 501c3 nonprofit with the mission of providing scholarships and funding for student athletes and student athlete facilities and programs. This will operate under that 501c umbrella of the 12th Man Foundation. And so because of that, donors who donate it will get a tax receipt, which there's some interesting wording on the website, but ultimately should result in a tax deduction. And then because A&M's the 12th Man Foundation is the main ticket selling or part of the whole process, they manage ticket selling for the athletic department. Priority points can be a part of it. And of course, priority points are things you can collect to if A&M goes to a big game where tickets are limited, people with more priority points get their first shot at the tickets. So the Arkansas one works a little bit different because that is a fund that's tied in with their nonprofit, their nonprofit booster club, but the boosters are paying into the fund, and that fund will then pay student athletes to go do work for different charitable organizations around the state. This one, it's paying athletes to market for the 12th Man Foundation through social media posts, speaking engagements, meet and greets, autograph signings, things like that. It's doing marketing and promotion for the 12th Man Foundation itself. So that's a little bit of what it is.
You talked with some legal experts about this. You can read about it, of course, on theeagle.com. It was in Wednesday's paper. Hey, the 12th Man Foundation, the 12th Man Plus Fund, it seems to check off the boxes to be, legal and abiding by regulations set by, the NCAA and state laws as well.
Yeah, when this first came out, it kind of felt like it didn't pass the smell test. Like, this is so close to the athletic department. And of course, by the Senate bill that made NIL legal, part of the wording of that bill said that schools, athletic departments can't get involved with brokering deals with the athletes or making deals directly with student athletes to represent the university or be in the university's interests, because then things could get a little shady with recruiting, and that's a whole nother rabbit trail. But because the 12th Man Foundation is its own 501c3, independent of the university and the athletic department, and what that means is they're not receiving any funding directly from the university or the athletic department. People who are employed by the 12th Man Foundation and people who are on their board of trustees aren't also employed by Texas A&M or the A&M athletic department. It maintains its independence as a little island surrounded kind of by the A&M athletics atmosphere. And so it can then take in donations and also broker deals with student athletes to be in the NIL space. That's what the legal experts said about the Senate bill. The other question that's at play here, and it's kind of been a gray area and a little bit of a hot button topic around NIL and collectives or funds is, okay, so these funds are signing up as 501c3s, which, according to the IRS, are tax-exempt charitable organizations. Well, the definition of charitable is kind of in play here, because is donors giving money to a fund where that fund then goes and becomes taxable income to student athletes, is that really charitable? And so when I talked to a few lawyers, they said that right now that's a gray area. There's a process to all this. So if you wanted to start a 501c3, you're going to file a form with the IRS and say, this is who we are, this is our mission, this is why we're a charity, and we need tax exempt status. Well, there's multiple ways to do that, but one of them is a short form where you don't really have to put much background or anything like that. And the reason there is a short form, and this is kind of the way most people go, is that the IRS, according to the IRS, receives 95,000 petitions or filings for nonprofits each year. So like they're inundated. And so they're not going to necessarily put a whole lot of scrutiny into some of these organizations that are filing with them. So as collectives or funds that have filed for 501c3s that are just completely third party, that are alumni based, nothing like the 12th Man Plus Fund, those have been getting through pretty easily because they isn't much scrutiny or IRS attention to those yet. Now, these lawyers say, is there going to be a time soon when maybe these organizations are going to be audited by the IRS and that definition of a charitable organization is going to be tested? Maybe that's a possibility, but on the horizon too is an act filed by John Thune, senator out of South Dakota, that the whole point of the law is just that collectives whose missions, or 501c3s whose main charitable mission is just for name, image, and likeness compensation for college athletes, you can't receive tax deductions from those. There hasn't been any movement on that. That was filed in September of last year. And so there's a lot, of course, going on in Washington right now. Whether that'll get a priority or not, it's here to say. I talked to Travis Dabney after the 12 Man Productions, 12 Man Foundation CEO and president. And he said, if this bill passed, if there is new legislation that is filed, they will, of course, pivot with that and keep it going. But actually, the thing that kind of seemed the fishiest, if you were to or the thing that seemed questionable the most about the 12th Man Plus Fund, and that is its tie with the 12th Man Foundation, that's actually the thing that gives it better legal standing when it comes to if it's a charitable organization or not, because the 12th Man Foundation has been around for since 1950. And so the definition of giving money to help student athletes, help facilities at an academic institution, that's pretty much past all the rigors of if it's a charity. That's widely recognized as a charitable organization. As long as the 12th Man Fund, the Plus Fund, contributions towards NIL remain less than the contributions towards other university and well-established charitable giving, it should be fine. But if all of a sudden in a couple of years' time, the 12th Man Foundation is taking in $50 million that's going all towards NIL, but their work towards university facilities and programs and scholarships dwindles down to $5 million, well, then that's kind of getting into that territory of, okay, well, what's the real mission? What's the main focus of this? And as the history shows with the 12th Man Foundation, that isn't seemingly going to be likely. Their main source of revenue, or excuse me, of donations and giving back towards the university should be towards facilities, scholarships, and things like that. It's probably actually going to hold better legal standing than some of these other collectives, funds that are third party, should any of that scrutiny come to pass from a legal sense. So it is on the cutting edge. It does seem like it actually is going to be more of the future of what this looks like. And these legal experts said, look at other universities to maybe be doing something similar. Now, the thing that why A&M could be on the cutting edge of this is that they've had that separation of the booster club and the athletic department for a very long time, as it's being its own independent 501c3. There's plenty of universities around the country where the booster club is tied in with the athletic department pretty directly. And in those cases, they can't, depending on the state laws and the NCAA rules, they can't do this. They're going to have to go through the process of separating, making their booster club independent before then they can go down this path of adding an NIL collective. But don't be surprised if in the next years you see a lot more of this happening around the country.
Well, Travis, let's round third and head home on this episode of the podcast. Let's talk a little A&M baseball. Seems like the Aggies had a little bit of a mix of good and bad during these first 4 games of the season. What'd you kind of take away from opening weekend?
I think the good is that the bats still seem to be there, and that they have an offense that can generate runs in multiple ways. You look at the opening night, it was a little more singles, doubles, getting them around the bases, moving guys. Saturday, it was all about the long ball with Austin Bose and Jake Laviolette just launching some moonshots out there at Bluebell Park. And man, they have some really good freshmen. I think there was a lot of talk about the veteran presence that's coming back from that team that went to Omaha last year. But you look at guys like Jace Laviolette out in the outfield, Carson Wells in the outfield too, having to take over for Brett Minnick. I just forgot his name, the catcher. That's been
Coffer,
behind
Max Coffer.
Max Coffer, yeah, behind home plate, who has done a really good job. And then Justin Lambert out of the bullpen on Saturday did a really good job as well. The freshmen have proven that they can play at this level of baseball, at least in the non-conference sense so far. And that's going to be reassuring because some of these guys are going to get pushed. I think that A&M had a really good team last year. I mean, good enough to be in the national semifinals, but I think what failed them is depth, not only in the pitching sense, but if someone was going through a little bit of a slump, there really wasn't anybody pushing anybody from behind in competition wise in the field. And I think you can see that some of these guys are going to be pushing guys for spots in the batting order. And so those are some of the positives. Some of the negatives that you've seen. Well, first, let's start in the first game, and that is Brett Minnick, a guy who was returning from last year, decided not to go to the pro level because of an injury he sustained middle to end of last year, a groin injury that he played throughout the end of the season, got surgery right at the end of the season, didn't do summer ball or fall ball, and was coming back saying, okay, this is going to be a season that I'm going to be back 100% healthy and be able to go through the season and try to earn a good spot in the draft. And first game, he slides headfirst into first on a close play and ends up breaking his thumb. Schlossnagle said it could be 6 weeks or so. Usually what that means is 6 weeks or so till he can get back into kind of practice, into maybe swinging a bat. If you look at, I know it's a little bit of a different injury than a broken thumb, but that broken handmate bone that Trevor Warner had, when you look at the length of time he was supposed to be out, it took him a couple extra weeks beyond that to be like back in the lineup and back to where he could actually perform. And then even when you're back in the lineup, getting your timing back and things, it's a little bit harder in baseball. I want to take a little quick
conference play, nonetheless.
Should say that again.
I said in the middle of conference play too, probably nonetheless.
Right. And maybe towards even the end of conference play. We'll have to see how that all shakes out. I'm going to take a little bit of a tangent here because it's a conversation I've seen had on social media a lot this week. And it's kind of that question of why dive at first base? I'm not a big proponent of it because there is more of a chance to get hurt. When you dive in head first on other bases, you're going to dive in well in front of the bag and slide to where your hands touch the bag. You're not kind of making a last minute choice to jump down on top of the bag where a first baseman might be searching for the base. And there's a lot that can go wrong there. The reason you would argue to do it, it's not to try to get there faster. In fact, it might actually be a little bit slower. But if a position player is going to be making a tough play that requires a tough throw, there's a chance that the throw could bring the first baseman off the bag. And then his only recourse is to try to apply a tag to the player. Well, if you go low, they're going to have to try to make the crazy catch and then come down to put the tag on. And the chances of them doing all that quickly are slim to none. So it's more of a chance of, okay, they're going to have to make a tough play to get me out here. I'm going to get down so that if there's a chance the throw brings the first baseman off the bag, he's not going to be able to make a tag on me. And it was a play where I believe the ball got under the first baseman's glove and the second baseman was having to range all the way over almost to the first baseline to make the play and make the throw. I can see the thought process of it, but that's kind of one of those moves you save for like a region final or towards the end of the season when you're fighting for a conference title. That's not a opening day weekend kind of move that you need to be making. And so I wish him the best. I hope he gets back soon. That's kind of the breakdown of that's happening. And then pitching beyond Nathan Detmer, which was another plus. I forgot to mention Nathan Detmer looked outstanding in that first game, but the pitching beyond Nathan Detmer, a little bit up and down. Last night they lost to Lamar. The bullpen failed them a little bit. And, when you score as many runs as they did last night, that should be enough to win a game, especially a Tuesday game. Once they got to the bullpen, they need to kind of figure things out a little bit there, but it's still early in the season. As even, we talked a lot about basketball and that loss to Wofford and, non-conference schedule. A Tuesday loss usually doesn't mean a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of stake put into Tuesday games. Now, if they lose several Tuesday games, that's where you could start seeing some trouble, but not a whole lot to put into losing a Tuesday game. They lost, I can't remember who was last year. They lost one of these Tuesday games to
Houston. That's kind of what kickstarted the whole Pringles thing. I remember that.
Right. And Houston wasn't necessarily a great team last year, so that's kind of the gist of it. It's still really early. They're still trying to figure out who's going to fall into what role and what the lineups look like, what the rotations look like. I think last year was a good case in point. They went through the first month of the season really kind of sputtering, and it wasn't until really conference play hit that they kind of found their stride, not too dissimilar to this A&M men's basketball team. So I think that everything should be fine with A&M, but we'll see how things start to shake out a little bit.
Travis, I want to close with this. Something else on the baseball side of things that I think was a point of conversation, maybe kind of across the country, was the new pace of play rules and, the pitch clock and some of that. What do you think of them? What did the players and coaches maybe think of them, and just how they're trying to, adapt to those, ongoing changes? It seems like there's a new rule change every year to try and, tweak pace of play.
Yeah, I think that we're going to need a little bit of a bigger sample size, but I think that there's some interesting pieces to this. I think if you look at the Friday night, the opener of the whole thing, if it wasn't for an eighth inning that A&M's bats came alive again, they were on pace to be just a little bit over a 2-hour game, and that's fantastic. I do think that there's something to college baseball needing to tighten things up a little bit time-wise. If you look at A&M last year, they were an offense that they stressed getting deep in counts, taking pitches, getting deep in counts, because the analytics said swinging earlier in at bats, you just doesn't have a bigger success rate. So you have like the entire lineup going up there looking to take pitches. That's a recipe for 4-hour, darn near 5-hour games. And nobody wants or needs that. So I think that there is an issue to be addressed here. I'll be interested to see how much some of this stuff helps and how much it's ruled the right way. If you look, the umpires are giving signals to the press box where they're keeping track of this 20-second clock. And I guess to reset a little bit, what is going on is there's a 20-second clock in between pitches now, where that starts as soon as the pitcher is on the rubber and the batter is in the batter's box. The clock starts. The pitcher has 20 seconds to make the pitch. A pitcher can call a step off the rubber, or a batter can call time once in the at bat. If they do it the second time, the pitcher is given a ball, the batter is given a strike. So how the umpire rules when both are on the base, when the clock should be reset. Technically, the pitcher is supposed to give the batter the first 10 seconds to get settled, and then kind of the second 10 seconds are his. As you saw in some of the games, A&M has kind of been working with their pitchers to like get on the rubber pitch to try to catch the batter off guard. And talking to some of the A&M batters through fall and spring practice this year, they said there was times where they kind of got in the base and kind of had their hand, touch the base, had their hand back, whatever, and the pitch was coming. And it kind of feels like slow pitch softball almost, where they're trying to get them off the rhythm. I think that if it's done right, it's going to, A, help the pitching a lot, but B, if both teams are trying to work quickly like that, then sure, it's going to increase pace of play. But I don't know if there's a lot of runners on base. There's no rule on how many times you can make pickoff moves. in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't seem like it's going to shave a whole lot of time off. And I don't know if how much it's affecting how the gameplay goes is worth how little time it potentially would take off. I think that maybe setting a time limit on video reviews might be a better way to go about that. The other thing that has been instituted this year is that these wristbands where they can use to call pitches that A&M is using. It's everyone on the field has one, pitcher, catcher, all of the defensive players, and there's like a remote control in the dugout, and they can indicate what pitch they want. So everyone on the field can look down at the wristband and see what pitch is going to be called, and they can throw it. So it does help the defenders a little bit in that they kind of know what pitch is coming. If it's a fastball outside, they might suspect that it's going to be a hit opposite field, be ready for that, those kinds of things. But the defenders don't need to start shading towards the opposite field to help tip off the batter of what kind of pitch might be coming. Schlossnagle, I don't think, is super in favor of it. He was fine with just the earpiece the catcher has and communicating that way. But he said he'd rather look at what was the worst possible thing that could happen doing that and how do you mitigate that. And he said, if you have a freshman pitcher and it's a bases loaded, 3-2 count, bottom of the ninth, you're in Alex box and your pitcher has already stepped off once and he doesn't get the sign. So what does he do? Just throw something back there and hope the catcher gets it? Or it's an interesting situation. So he said he'd rather go with the wristbands where everyone knows what pitch is coming, so that if there is some little breakdown, they know what's coming, and there's not that instance of the freshman pitcher not knowing what to do because there are these new rules and everything like that. Ask me that question again in a podcast in a couple of months, and let's get a little bit bigger case study on how this is moving the games along. I have a feeling that more times than not, it's going to feel about the same, but there will be a few games that speed through maybe a little bit faster than normal.
Fair enough. We'll definitely revisit this whole subject, but I think that's all the time we have. So, Travis, any final words?
No, it's weird being 87 degrees in February.
Yeah, what the heck? This is odd.
But that means that it's just getting a little bit closer feeling to baseball weather, which you got to love when it's actually warm in Bluebell Park and not like feeling like it's 20 below zero. And it's pretty fun. And you got it's fun from an A&M fan's perspective when you got so much good stuff going on campus. From a trying to get to this stuff perspective, it took me over an hour last night to get to Reed Arena because baseball and basketball were playing at the same time as students were getting out, and that's not fun. So maybe a good mix of fun and not fun going on right now.
Fair enough. Well, thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the My Aggie Nation podcast. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage on Texas A&M sports. Travis Brown, I'm Alex Miller. We'll see you next week.